The Natalee Holloway case shocked millions. Her killer, a Dutch citizen who was already behind bars at Peru's notorious Chayapalca prison by the time he confessed. In June 2005, Van Der Sloot was the prime suspect in the disappearance of Natalee Holloway, who vanished from Aruba while on a high school class trip. Her disappearance remained unsolved for more than 18 years. Then, in October 2023, Van Der Sloot finally confessed, admitting to beating the teen to death after she refused his advances, then dumping her body in the ocean.
He said that after killing her on the beach in Aruba, he put her into the water, and that was the last that he ever saw her.
The confession was part of a plea deal with the U.S. in response to federal charges of wire fraud and extortion. Van Der Sloot had attempted to extort $250,000 from Holloway's family with a promise to tell them where he'd dumped their daughter's body. He couldn't be charged with Holloway's murder because Aruba's 12-year statute of limitations had already passed. He ultimately received a 20-year sentence for the extortion attempt. Van Der Sloot is serving that sentence concurrently with a Peruvian prison sentence for the brutal 2010 murder of Stephanie Flores in Lima, Peru. He met the 21-year-old Flores, a business student from a prominent Peruvian family, at a Lima casino, then strangled and beat her to death in his hotel room. It was 5 years to the day after Holloway went missing.
The pain that we're feeling will never go away.
Van Der Sloot has been incarcerated since June 2010 when Chilean authorities arrested him after he fled Lima a few days after Flores' murder. After Chile extradited him to Peru, Van Der Sloot pleaded guilty to killing Flores and was sentenced by a 3-judge panel in January 2012. In 2014, the killer married and fathered a daughter, later filing for divorce when he began an affair with a younger woman. As of February 2024, multiple outlets have reported that he receives conjugal visits from 3 different women, including a long-term girlfriend. In April 2024, 2 inmates attacked him in a common area of Chayapalca prison, a maximum security penitentiary in Peru's highlands. He escaped with only minor injuries, but according to an unnamed Peruvian prison official who spoke with the New York Post, many people want him dead. Van Der Sloot has been held at 3 different Peruvian prisons to date. In addition, he spent time in the Hoover City Jail in Alabama during the sentencing process for the charges related to the Holloway case. His lawyers said Van Der Sloot was happy to be in a U.S. jail, even if only for a short time, because the conditions in the Peruvian prison system were, quote, horrific. Among the Peruvian prisons where he's served times are Miguel Castro Prison in Lima, Piedras Gordas Prison, and Chayapalca Prison. Prison officials have moved Van Der Sloot amid allegations that he has received special treatment, including having internet access and a cell phone.
He told me at one time that he could play online gambling. He had a cell phone for a while. He called me.
The prisoner's current home at Chayapalca Prison is likely the worst to date. Besides being overcrowded and filthy, Chayapalca is isolated high in the Andes Mountains, which is one reason why a report by the humanitarian organization Amnesty International claims the prisoners there may be suffering cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment.
Jodi Arias was convicted for the first-degree murder of Travis Alexander in May 2013. It might not be surprising to hear that the first 2 years were some of the worst of Jodi Arias' long sentence. The convicted felon was held in maximum custody at Perryville Prison. ABC 15 described the difficult conditions of her new life. Not only was the cell 12 feet by 7 feet, but she was forced to remain there for 23 hours of the day.
Jodi Arias' life will now fit in a 7 by 12-foot box. Look at how big that really is, or should I say small.
Arias was allowed visitors for 2 hours per week, but the interactions were separated by thick glass. Although she remained at Perryville, Arias was eventually put into the less restrictive custody. According to her inmate file obtained by 12 News, she could have cellmates again, as well as interact with the other prisoners in a group. In the following years, the convict enjoyed increased freedom and kept busy working at the Lumley Library of her unit. Arias began the part-time gig as a library aide in 2018. Before then, she had the unpleasant task of scrubbing toilets, according to prison records obtained by Radar Online. The new library job came with a pay cut of 10 cents, but she had only been making 50 cents an hour. Jodi Arias has used the internet and her network of friends outside of prison to sell her artwork on one of her personal websites, Art by Jodi Arias. Arias explains on her website why she began making art, saying, "The act of creating art has been with me since I was old enough to hold a crayon and has remained a part of my life in varying degrees, from mere dabbling to blissful obsession." But she also admitted that her reasoning had to do with struggling while incarcerated. She added, "I often felt hungry in jail and my family could do little little to financially support me, an adult who should have been feeding herself. High temperatures due to regional climate or unexpected heat waves can be extremely dangerous for prison inmates. In Arizona, where Jodi Arias is serving her jail sentence, the heat can reach over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. According to the Daily Beast, those heat conditions can sometimes lead to hospitalizations or even death. But Arias has often been provided with resources to mitigate the danger and provide comfort that many other incarcerated individuals do not have access to. A post on Arias' website revealed that prison guards were supplying ice in a styrofoam cooler for her to use with her fan, according to Radar Online. But according to her website, in 2021, someone announced that they would attempt to break Arias out of confinement, so she was moved to another cell with the luxury of air conditioning. Over the years, Arias has had access to other perks too. It's been reported that she possesses a respectable collection of magazines and has been allowed to have some fashion options, such as a set of brand new tennis shoes. As described by the New York Times, there are plenty of incarcerated individuals who have had a far worse experience than Jodi Arias. But her life on the inside hasn't been pleasant, with probably the worst aspect being the numerous threats that have been made against her. In 2015, Arias was sent a letter that was confiscated before it reached her, which warned that there was a plot to hire an inmate to harm her, according to 12 News. The following year, Arias claimed another inmate was heard yelling at her, saying, "I'm going to expletive kill you, expletive the same way you killed redacted name." In 2021, another event occurred which was more bizarre than life-threatening. A man whom Arias had never met before claimed that he was going to rescue her from prison. He was caught in the process, as explained on JodiAriasIsInnocent.com. For her safety, Arias was moved to a more secure location and was forced to pause her daily activities. In 2012, while Jodi Arias was preparing to go to trial for the brutal murder of Travis Alexander, a wealthy art collector named Ben Ernst became interested in Arias. Ernst was dating another woman at the time, but began communicating with Arias. A friend of Ernst told In Touch, they quickly became buddies and eventually were talking on the phone about 3 times a week. Even though Arias had been convicted, the couple still became serious enough that she began making wedding plans and even spoke about having a child with Ernst. Her imprisonment was a major obstacle, so she wrote a letter to her friend and mitigation specialist, Maria de la Rosa, that said, "Ben can't come visit, so here's what he needs to do. If we marry, then he can petition a court to grant us visitation." The marriage never happened, but it didn't stop her boyfriend from visiting her in the following years. In 2019, Radar Online revealed that Ernst still went to see Arias several times a month. Although conjugal visits are prohibited in the Arizona prison system, their visits were several hours long.
On July 22, 1991, authorities in Milwaukee were led to the apartment of Jeffrey Dahmer by a man who escaped after being held captive there. Immediately upon arrival, authorities noted a foul odor inside the apartment. On further inspection, they found crates full of chemicals, a drawer full of macabre Polaroid photos, and numerous body parts, including 5 severed heads. Dahmer was ultimately charged and convicted of 15 counts of first-degree murder and subsequently sentenced to 15 life terms, which were to be served consecutively.
I hope you can deal with what you've done.
Dahmer arrived at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin in February 1992. Due to the heinous nature of his crimes, Dahmer's case gained international attention. Therefore, in the interest of his own safety, he was placed in protective custody and held in isolation. Dahmer was also kept in shackles whenever he was out of his cell. After serving for a year, Dahmer asked prison officials to reconsider their decision to keep him in protective custody. As he had been cooperative and did not have any major infractions, he was moved out of the isolation cell and into a unit for prisoners with emotional and mental health difficulties. In this new unit, Dahmer had the freedom to interact with others. In addition to sharing mealtime, he was allowed to attend classes and sign up for work duties. Although some of the activities were not supervised, Dahmer appeared to get along with everyone. Dahmer also began spending time with prison minister Roy Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe claimed Dahmer expressed sincere remorse for the crimes he committed, even suggesting he should have been put to death as punishment. Dahmer also began taking a Bible correspondence course. It was mailed to him by Kurt Booth, who was a member of Oklahoma's Crescent Church of Christ. Booth learned about Dahmer while watching news coverage about his trial. In an interview which Booth saw on television, Dahmer proclaimed that he just wanted to find a little peace. Booth said he could tell the convicted killer was hurting and sent him the course material because he wanted to help Dahmer find peace through religion. After completing the course, Dahmer expressed an interest in being baptized. However, the prison did not have a formal baptismal tank, and nobody seemed willing to bring one in. Booth eventually got in touch with Roy Ratcliffe, and they arranged for the baptism to take place in the prison's whirlpool bathtub. Jeffrey Dahmer was baptized in May 1994. Following his baptism, Dahmer purchased 25 Bible correspondence courses, which he distributed to his fellow inmates. During this time, Dahmer seemed to maintain a ghoulish sense of humor, which his fellow inmates did not appreciate. For example, Dahmer routinely made jokes about cannibalism, molded his food to resemble body parts, and routinely warned guards and his fellow inmates that he may bite them. This behavior had deadly consequences. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer and 2 inmates, Jesse Anderson and Christopher Scarver, were cleaning the restrooms in the prison's gym. The 3 men were alone inside the restroom for approximately 20 minutes. When the guards returned, they found Anderson and Dahmer badly beaten. Both men ultimately died as a result of the wounds inflicted by Scarver. Scarver later said he had been unnerved by Dahmer's behavior, including his habit of making his food look like dismembered bodies. Scarver also claimed that Dahmer crossed the line with a number of people in the facility, both staff and prisoners. Referring to Dahmer, he said, "Some people who are in prison are repentant, but he was not one of them." Dahmer's attorney, Gerald Boyle, believes he knew his client would be killed when he asked to be placed in a unit with other inmates. Boyle said, "Dahmer had a death wish, and I know he didn't have the gumption to do it himself, so I predicted that the day would come when he would be killed in prison."
A vicious killing spree, a dramatic trial, and a shocking confession. Ted Bundy is known for the brutal killings of more than 30 women. But what happened once the notorious serial killer was behind bars? Theodore Robert Bundy is also one of the most infamous serial killers in the annals of American crime history. Although he admitted to murdering at least 36 women during a multi-state killing spree in the 1970s, experts believe he may have actually killed 100 or more. The former law school student would often lure his victims into death by pretending to be injured and using a cast, sling, or crutches. When his infamous and manipulative charm failed him, he would pose as a police officer or firefighter. Bundy was first arrested in 1975 after a high-speed chase by Highway Patrol Officer Bob Hayward. In 1976, he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison for the attempted kidnapping of an 18-year-old from Salt Lake City, Utah in 1974. He made his first prison escape during a transfer from Utah to Colorado in 1977, but was soon recaptured. However, he had more success with his next escape attempt, which was also in 1977. Bundy made it to Tallahassee, Florida, where he went on another murder spree, killing 2 women at a sorority house near Florida State University and later a 12-year-old girl. He was arrested for the final time in 1978 and indicted on murder charges. Ultimately, he was convicted in 1979 and sentenced to death by electrocution the same year. During his years on death row, Ted Bundy received frequent visits from his wife, Carol Ann Boone. Bundy and Boone met while they were working at the Washington State Department of Emergency Services. At the time, they were both in relationships with other people. They eventually lost touch, but in 1977, they reconnected while Bundy was in jail in Utah. As the relationship blossomed, Boone moved to Florida to attend Bundy's trial for the murder of his 12-year-old victim, Kimberly Leach. Boone testified for Bundy as a character witness. In fact, Bundy and Boone got married in court during his trial, as she believed he was innocent.
Will you marry me?
Yes.
And I do hereby marry you.
Boone said that the guards allowed them to have sex, and she eventually became pregnant and gave birth to Rose Bundy in 1981, all while Bundy was on death row.
I don't think that Ted belongs in jail.
But as his execution date came closer, Bundy began to open up about his crimes. This prompted Boone to divorce him in 1986, as she realized that he was, in fact, not innocent. Bundy told FBI Special Agent Bill Hagmaier that he killed 30 people in 7 states between 1973 and 1978.
I deserve certainly the most extreme punishment society has.
At first, it seemed that Ted Bundy's time in prison did not affect him, but A&E reports that he spent his final night in prison in tears appealing to God. In an interview with psychologist and religious broadcaster James Dobson on the last night of his life, Bundy said that he took responsibility for his brutal crimes. Moreover, he prayed with a Methodist minister. In the hours before his death, Esquire reports that Bundy called his mother twice. At the end of the second call, she told Bundy, "You'll always be my precious son." According to A&E, he was given a final meal of steak, eggs, toast, and hash browns. He did not eat it. With this, a prison spokesperson noted, it appeared that he was accepting the finality of the situation. On January 24, 1989, Bundy made his way into the death chamber. He reportedly looked scared and apprehensive. An article from the Los Angeles Times notes that 42 people watched as he was placed into the electric chair. Once he was strapped in, he looked at his attorney and minister and said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." The Los Angeles Times writes that Bundy was then electrocuted with 2,000 volts of electricity. By 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was dead.
Bundy was executed before an atmosphere that was almost circus-like.
Bundy was then cremated, and his ashes were scattered over the Cascade Mountains.
Necrophilia, cannibalism, and a desire to be caught. Ed Kemper did some heinous things to earn his incarceration, and now he doesn't want to leave prison. Edmund Kemper, also known as the Co-Ed Killer, is one of the most famous serial killers in the United States. He was arrested in April 1973 after killing his mother and her best friend, but he left a trail of victims behind him. The notorious killer is now serving a life sentence at the California Medical Facility and became crucial in the FBI's understanding of serial killers. Kemper has become significant in pop culture, appearing in Netflix's Mindhunter and inspiring the character Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs.
I was also involved in killing co-eds because my mother was associated with college work, college co-eds.
Like many other serial killers, Kemper had a troubled childhood. He was physically and emotionally abused by his alcoholic mother, who would often lock him up in a basement at night. When Kemper was 14 years old, he ran away to live with his father, who rejected him. He then went to live with his grandparents in North Fork, California, which is where he started killing. According to Kemper, his grandmother was also abusive. In 1964, when he was just 15 years old, Kemper shot his grandmother dead after an argument. When his grandfather arrived home, Kemper shot him too. Following the murders, Kemper called his mother, who told him to call the police. Authorities sent him to the California Youth Authority, where he spent the next 5 years. At the facility, Ed Kemper underwent multiple tests. Although the results showed that Kemper had a very high IQ, they also diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. After his diagnosis, he was sent to Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility for convicts with mental health issues. Surprisingly, Kemper developed a friendly relationship with his psychiatrist, who eventually made the teenager his assistant. Despite apparently adapting well to the facility, several psychologists didn't believe that Kemper was ready for release back into the world. Nevertheless, on December 18, 1969, which was his 21st birthday, Kemper was released from the facility to live with his mother. Kemper was massive, and with a height of 6'3" and a weight of 280 pounds, it's no surprise that some people began calling him Big Ed. Between 1972 and 1973, Kemper killed 6 female students while they were hitchhiking. Kemper allegedly said, "When I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think 2 things. One part of me wants to take her home, be real nice and treat her right. The other part wonders what her head would look like on a stick." Kemper murdered his victims in many different ways, including shooting, stabbing, and strangling. The vicious killer would also have sex with the bodies of his victims and would often decapitate them and keep their heads as trophies. In April 1973, Ed Kemper killed his mother while she was sleeping and raped the body. Later, he invited his mother's best friend over and strangled her as well. Afterwards, Kemper fled. However, he reportedly became upset when he didn't hear about his crimes on the radio. To satiate his appetite for the spotlight, he called the police and confessed to the murders. After being arrested, the serial killer gave details about the crimes, which included necrophilia and cannibalism. During his trial, he pleaded insanity and asked for the death penalty. In November 1973, Kemper was sentenced to life in prison. Surprisingly, while serving his sentence, Kemper helped the FBI to catch other serial killers. During the 1970s, researchers and police didn't know much about the inner workings of serial murderers. The FBI launched a pioneer project that involved visiting prisons to talk to dangerous criminals and understand their minds. In fact, Netflix's Mindhunter, which is based on real events, recreated some of the FBI's interviews with Kemper. Brianna Fox, a former FBI agent and researcher at the Bureau's Behavioral Science Unit, revealed to A&E, he was able to provide a lot of insights as to why these offenders commit these crimes. FBI agents were able to identify some common characteristics and backgrounds among serial killers we normally would not have known about. Kemper is serving his sentence at California Medical Facility in Vacaville, and he reportedly doesn't want to live a normal life. His attorney said in 2007, per the New York Post, his feeling is that he, and this is his belief, no one's ever going to let him out, and he's just happy. He's just as happy going about his life in prison.